Okay, I appreciate the context, Sunset, but I've been at this long enough to recognize color coordination, though not as well as Rarity.
This is toasted oat and linen lamb's wool, eggshell, warm frost, pale nimbus.
Forgotten Friendship is the longest Equestria Girls feature we've had in a while, so I wanted to share my thoughts. But no, this does not mean that I've forgotten my original promise.
More when I review that movie in 2018.
Can you say self-fulfilling prophecy? But that phrase is uniquely timed, as this special has a lot to do with the idea of oneself. How much do other people define our sense of self? How do we express the person we want to be versus what others attempt to label us? How much do past mistakes factor into who we are now? Equestria Girls hasn't grabbed my attention the same way as My Little Pony, mostly because of the setting. Although the magic has become a more constant element thanks to magical geodes, the focus is often on an idealized school. Aside from the occasional magical being attacking, the biggest threats these characters face is who is going to be photographed in the most clubs, who gets to take part in the school play, who got the high score on the latest test. If none of these ideas matter to the viewer, then the series can lose momentum. Personally, I've been more a fan of stories that show the characters growing, figuring out what they like or who they want to be, expressing themselves or putting forth their best. So we get a little of that as we close out the opening theme song and go right into another song. It's like this special is in a hurry to get Sunset's backstory out of the way so we can focus on the really important stuff.
The student body has entrusted me with the responsibility of gathering their memories into the pages of this book.
If this were the focus of the whole thing, then I'd probably be less invested. But it really comes down to Sunset suddenly being on the outside, a victim of the most evil magic of all, retcons. I'm glad this special focuses on Sunset because she really is the heart of the Equestria Girls series. An odd thing to say given that she started as a very bland villain. But when I talk about growth and making the choice on who you want to be, she exemplifies this. While others don't question their magic, she tries to understand it and in time begins to encourage her friends. She's expressing both a love of science and art. And here we get to see how she chooses to act when the support is knocked out from underneath her. Back in Rainbow Rocks, she could at least confide in her friends while trying to redefine herself. Now she doesn't even have that. And in the middle of all this, the very people she's won over are now turning on her. Even Sunset's own temper starts to dictate her actions, making her wonder if she's really changed.
Am I nice?
I'm glad for those moments where she's tempted to lash out, because it shows that she isn't absent her vices or failings. So what better time to have her come full circle and reunite with Pony Twilight and finally address her greatest obstacle, facing her past and reconciling with Celestia. Despite Celestia's theatrics, I enjoyed seeing them re-embrace and affirm that Sunset has changed from the student who abandoned Equestria. Though I will point out that I presented this well over a year ago, with less than half the animation quality and no dialogue. But still, let me have this! I'm glad that Equestria Girls has moved away from relying on pony-based scenes, but I am simultaneously happy to see Celestia and Luna supporting the younger ponies. I'm also happy to see Moondancer again. I can only imagine how she'd react to the restricted section that is, for reasons beyond my understanding, not protected within the Royal Palace. Maybe a sense of misdirection? Hiding in plain sight? Maybe Moondancer's reaction would be similar to Twilight's hyperventilating.
Don't take this away from me!
Which brings us to the presentation of various characters. The core focus here is upon Sunset Shimmer, Trixie, and our antagonist, Wallflower Blush. Though the Humane Six are part of the tale, their role is relegated mostly to comedy and skits, and making it very easy for me to make a Magical Girls reference. Much like My Little Pony the movie, the group all have moments of humor, but the most memorable parts often go to the loudest. That's why Princess Twilight stands out more in my memory than her scientific counterpart, and Pinkie Pie devours the spotlight in almost every scene.
Like that.
If I had one wish for the group, it'd be the chance to see them trying to reconcile a dissonance. The Memory Stone of Legend, another bit of equestrian history carelessly abandoned in this human world, can remove parts of memories, but from what I can tell, it can't replace them. As a result, the Humane Six don't seem to question who talked Twilight down from her time as Midnight Sparkle. They don't know who coached them to accept their new magic, which one could argue is a metaphor for change and maturity. And if they've taken as many photos as Sunset with their smartphones, did none of them stumble upon hard evidence? Had the special been allowed more time, possibly a full movie, I'm betting we'd see them question their own assumptions or wrestle with the sense that something is missing.
I can't quite remember.
In their place is Trixie, who was a minor antagonist for the first half of the story, but becomes Sunset's sole supporter. I enjoy Trixie's moments where she drops the ego and actually bonds with others, or at least foils her own bluster. She can match Pinkie Pie for trying to seize the spotlight, but because her personality is more egocentric, it means more when she stops and considers others. She's not a big part of this story, but she is there for when it counts. Thus we come to Wallflower Blush, arguably the most empathetic antagonist in Equestria Girls' run. The Sirens remain my favorite in terms of power and danger, but Wallflower seems a more real character. She's not out to conquer the world or claim all the magic. She's not even looking to elevate her own status. She's internalized a great deal of anger from being ignored by so many and is looking for fairness, something to balance the scales. So when she stumbles upon a power that allows her to wipe away memories of her own mistakes, it's easy to understand why she was tempted. Without realizing it, she wiped her own impact on the world away from others, which in turn fueled her anger at being ignored and forgotten. I could go on about this, but Jean-Luc Picard said it best.
There are many parts of my youth that I'm not proud of. Loose threads. Untidy parts of me that I would like to remove. But when I pulled on one of those threads, it unraveled the tapestry of my life.
This is in stark contrast to characters like Principal Cinch or Juniper Montage, who likewise tampered with powers they couldn't understand, but were so ego-driven that they became characters of ambition rather than examples. I also enjoy Wallflower's design as she's the least visual standout. A striped sweater and jeans versus the rest of Candlelight High's branding. This is how an average person would dress in a world that's meant to be populated by eccentrics. Her greatest positive expression is the garden she cultivated, but she can't even seem to win people over with that. So I may not agree with her tactics, as mind-altering magic still sounds like the most horrible idea, but I understand why she did it. I also appreciate that while Sunset's first impulse is to clobber her, some coaching from Trixie helps Sunset consider alternatives.
I used to be just like you. Sure, I was popular, but I was lonely.
Side note, I've seen a lot of people compare the Memory Stone's design to the recurring eye symbol found in the Legend of Zelda series. But that leads me to question where Zelda got the inspiration. After all, the Triforce itself is identical to the Hojo clan's Mitsuroko emblem. The fun thing about recognizing designs is that it can open the door to learning more about iconography. Eyes are often considered windows into the soul, and when memories are both taken and restored to characters, they go through the forehead in the same place as the fabled third eye or mind's eye. Maybe I could read up on this if I got a closer look at this.
But it is nothing compared to the magic of... Yeah, we get it! Light her up, lady!
I'd be far more upset if it wasn't for that delightful self-satire. I'm glad Wallflower didn't go the same route of turning into a giant enemy as we've seen with so many others. She was, at the end of the day, a confused young woman in over her head. My one lament is that we'll likely not see her again anytime soon. We haven't seen the Sirens since their defeat. Principal Cinch has been ousted off screen. Juniper's nowhere to be found, and even though the Crystal Prep Ladies made a return, they're not real staples for the show. Sunset grew to become my favorite of the series because we stuck with her after a lackluster introduction. I think many of the characters could show their best by coaching Wallflower on how to approach others without sacrificing her own identity. As things stand, we're assured that the relationships are mended, but I'm not expecting her to make a return, which does make her conversion a little bitter. Her main issue is being forgotten, and here I am, expecting the series to do just that. But all in all, I enjoyed this special for showing how far Sunset has come without acting as if her old ways can't influence her again. We got to see her fleshed out and settle a lingering question on how she might address Celestia. Sunset's friends provided some fun moments, and there's plenty of self-referential humor to make one smile. Like I say, the Sirens remain my favorite villains, but Wallflower may be my favorite antagonist. One final thought. Did this special also give us a little fleshing out of Celestia's growth?
Princess Celestia has a sense of humor? Looks like I'm not the only one who's changed.
Celestia has had a flippant side since season 1, but Sunset's line makes me question how she behaved before then. Is it possible that after Sunset left, a more rigid Princess Celestia had to look at her own methods and decided that she needed to lighten up or risk future failure? That's a fascinating idea, and I'm hoping fans might explore it. Either way, I think this is worth a watch, and I'm curious to see the extended cut due out on YouTube someday. I'm Silver-Quill. Thanks for watching.